see the two cranes with H&W on them? Harland and Wolff. You see the yellow ones kind of at 11 o'clock out there? That's where we're heading.
So now we're in Ireland, then?
Yes, love, yeah. I hope so.
I hope so.
The last time I got off there, it was in Ireland. I hope I'm still in Ireland. So, Harland and Wolff, you're welcome to Belfast. And it's the capital of the north of Ireland. Of course, it was noted for its linen industry, its whiskey distilling, and of course its shipbuilding as well.
Irish linen.
But in recent times, it's more known for what we would call the political upheaval and political violence and everything like that. But we have enough of that. So we're going down to see where Titanic was built. It's quite an interesting visit. And needless to say, there's a souvenir shop. They're making more from souvenirs than they did out of the vessel itself. So Belfast takes its name from two words, Béal and Ferrishta. Béal means in Gaelic, it means the mouth of. Ferrishta is the river it was built on, was called the Farset, F-A-R-S-E-T-C-E-T. But that Farset river has long since been, it still runs underneath and it joins up with a river called the Lagan. So today the river Lagan is where Belfast is built on. We'll be passing down and you'll see what formerly was the Farset. It was, you know, in times gone by, a lot of land would have been exposed to water. And when they're building up cities and ports in particular, they reclaim a lot of marshland. So the Farset is kind of filled in, and the Lagan is the river it's built on. Now in Scotland and in this part of the world, they call in Scotland, the Presbyterian people would call a church a kirk. So the main church here would be called a kirk as well. K-I-R-K. Alas, there's no more shipbuilding in Belfast, and there's very little on the Clyde now as well. A lot of what to do now, the people that would have worked in shipbuilding, they repair oil rigs because the North Sea has oil rigs getting damaged and need for maintenance every so often. And they're also producing wind turbines, the blades for wind turbines that had been doing up here. But it was Belfast, just to give you an idea, the Shackleton bomber was built here, the Harrier jet, jump jet, the first vertical takeoff jet was built here. The heart defibrillator was invented here. Did you know that?
No.
Believe it or not, air conditioning that we don't use.
That's right.
Milk of magnesia. Dr. Murray. The hydraulic ram. A guy by the name of Harry Ferguson. A lot of those now would have a Scottish connection as well. Remember the Presbyterian people they came across? We're speaking about that type of person.
What?
Interesting straight.
Low tide.
Low tide?
Yeah.
A lot of motorbikes getting off of that, isn't there?
Yeah, that was definitely feel that that's what I'm
Jim reckons they might be heading to Killarney. Killarney.
Can you tell about the history of Belfast?
Pardon?
About the history of Belfast.
Yeah, I told you the history. The history of Belfast is really, it was at one time it would have been an old Celtic settlement and a monastic settlement, and then with the coming of the new people, the planted people from the 1600s, and then the Industrial Revolution, it was built up as a city or a bigger urban area, and it's not that old, believe it or not. It's only around there for about 500 years, 400 years, but it really came to prominence during the Industrial Revolution with whiskey, shipbuilding, and linen manufacturing as well. Why you hear so much about Belfast now is because of the recent past. The recent past and the political violence and everything like that. But there are far older places in Ireland than Belfast.
Oh, great.
Now, Northern Ireland has its own government as well. If you could imagine, as I was telling you, the House of Parliament in London and Westminster is responsible for all the governance of the United Kingdom. But then Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland have their own devolved governments as well. And because of that political violence, it was proven that one community dominating another community hadn't worked. So the only consensus that could come to make it work was have what was known as a power sharing executive. And if you remember, I was telling you about that 1998 Good Friday Agreement. That was the consensus that regardless of a greater amount of Protestants over Catholic, that had proved to be a failure, and the nationalists were never going to go back that way. So with the banging of heads together of President Clinton, Tony Blair in the United Kingdom, and we also had the Irish Taoiseach, or Prime Minister, but we call him Taoiseach. His name was Bertie Ahern. And then all the meetings that was held by the staff of Senator George Mitchell and John DeShastel and those, they were the ones that got all this brought together, and now is what's called a power sharing executive. And a power sharing executive is the political parties that put themselves up for election, and they would be Sinn Féin and the Democratic Unionist Party. They would be the largest political party. One is nationalist, the other is loyalist, and they receive the most amount of votes. So they're the two main parties in what's known as this power sharing executive. At the moment, it's in a state of flux because that cannot come to an agreement. Now, recently in Britain, Theresa May's government needed to be propped up after a recent general election, and the Democratic Unionist Party from Northern Ireland are the ones that's propping that government up. But when it comes to the governance of Northern Ireland, they haven't got it together yet. It collapsed last January, but that doesn't mean there's any violence, there's not. That means they're in a state of politics, and there's toing and froing, and one crowd is giving a bit and the other crowd is accepting a bit, and that's the way it's going to be. If you look over to the right hand side, in the distance you can see high tower blocks. You may see some Irish tricolours on those. I don't know whether you can or you can't. That would be an area known as West Belfast. That would be the heartland of the provisional IRA in times gone back, but thankfully there's no violence. You could not come in here one time up until 1998 and there'd be at least three helicopters in the sky all the time. All of the city would have been locked down. You could not come in with coach or car. It was complete because there was more bomb threats and bombings. It was crazy stuff altogether. But you can see, have a look at the buildings. It's growing up, it's rising like the phoenix from the ashes. And it's coming because both traditions are inclusive and respective of each other's tradition. Again, with a lot of help from others as well. Now look to your left hand side, and you can see the H&Ws on the cranes. They were the largest engineering cranes in the world at one time. There's a preservation order from them. They're called Samson and Goliath. So we're going to go down there. It's very quick now what happens here. Jim has to take the coach away because he's taking your luggage away. If you're leaving anything on the coach, it's going to be quite safe. Don't worry about that. But he's taking the coach away, and we're going to go. And first of all, you'll get someone coming on and doing that introduction. More than likely, they'll do that introduction. You know what that is?
It's a travel driver.
Thanks,
You won't leave over there. So before you go in now, a couple of things coming up. A tender that took the people out to Titanic from Cherbourg was called the Nomadic. And when they loaded passengers in a place called Cherbourg in the north of France, the Nomadic is coming up on your left hand side. That was a little tender because the Titanic was so big at the time, they had no way of docking it, so it had to be put out in deep anchorage, and this tender would have brought the people out to it. Do you see it here? on the left hand side. What you're looking at front, that modern building, are the four bows of ships, and that's the exact height the Titanic was above the waterline of the Atlantic. So before you go in, look up and you'll get an idea how tall it was. As we turn left on the right hand side, you see a red brick building. That's called Titanic House. Titanic House is where the draftsmen and engineers, all the drawings for Titanic, Britannic, Olympic, all of those were done in here. Around the outside of the building, before you go into it, there's a dark, like a little river or a pool. That's giving the appearance of how dark and cold the waters was the night of the Titanic was sunk. And the upright poles that we're going to go up and turn around, you can see them like with lights in them. That's the exact height that the slips were for launching the ships down. Again, on the right hand side, you can see these different colours. They're Titanic studios. The making of films is a big thing here now. So, I'm going to go and get the tickets. Someone will come and say hello to you, do a little introduction. And then you come in. Before you leave, or if you need to use bathrooms, as you go through the door, down the stairs to the left hand side. But don't worry, because there's bathrooms in the galleries up